What if the person who holds your future in their hands has no idea who you really are? Jamal had always kept a low profile, quietly doing his job and staying out of the spotlight. But when his manager, a man known for his sharp words and sharp looks, told him, "Know your limits," Jamal felt a sting deeper than any insult he had ever heard. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what Jamal knew, and what his manager didn't. What happens when the person you think is beneath you is someone you can't afford to underestimate? Stay tuned. Jamal's life was a quiet one. He had a small apartment in the city, a job he didn't mind, and a circle of friends who understood the weight he carried every day. Being one of the few black employees at the tech firm wasn't easy, but he had learned to keep his head down, work hard, and never stir the pot. In a world where every glance felt like a judgment, Jamal's strategy had always been simple: stay unnoticed. He didn't expect much. Maybe a promotion someday, but nothing extravagant. His manager, Richard, was a different story, always pushing, always expecting more from Jamal than anyone else. Everyone knew Richard had his favorites, and Jamal, no matter how hard he worked, never quite made it to the top of the list. But that all changed on a Thursday afternoon. Jamal had just completed a major project, the one he'd poured weeks of effort into, hoping it would get noticed. He was ready to move up, ready to prove his worth. But when he walked into Richard's office, his heart sank. "Know your limits, Jamal," Richard had said with a smirk that left Jamal frozen. There was something cold, something almost personal in those words. As Jamal left the office, the sting of that statement gnawed at him. He had worked harder than anyone, yet in that moment, he felt smaller than ever. Little did Richard know Jamal wasn't just an employee. He was about to change the very balance of power in that office. The next few weeks at work felt like an endless countdown to something Jamal couldn't yet see. Every glance from Richard, every side comment from his coworkers seemed to carry more weight. No one said it outright, but Jamal could feel the walls closing in on him. It was as if the moment he walked into the office, the air thickened. Richard had already made his opinion clear. Jamal was good, but not good enough. And he made sure to let him know, time and time again. At first, Jamal tried to brush it off. He continued to put in the hours, stayed late, polished every project to perfection. But the more he gave, the more Richard took. His work never seemed enough. His ideas were ignored in meetings, even when they were the ones that saved a project from falling apart. Richard had a way of stealing credit, making sure it never reached Jamal's name. One day, things reached a breaking point. Jamal had just nailed a major presentation that had the potential to bring in new clients that could elevate the entire department. He was sure this time things would be different. He could feel it in his gut. The approval, the recognition, it was within his reach. But Richard didn't look at him the way Jamal had hoped. Instead, he glanced at him coldly, then turned to the rest of the team. "Great work, Jamal," he said, his voice thick with sarcasm. "But we need to make sure we don't get ahead of ourselves. We're still a long way from being top tier." Jamal's stomach dropped. He had just given everything, and it still wasn't enough. He could feel his anger bubbling beneath the surface, but he swallowed it. He had to. His job, his livelihood, everything depended on keeping his composure. Yet there was a fire inside him that refused to be ignored. Days passed, and the tension continued to build. Jamal overheard whispers in the break room, saw the way Richard's cronies gathered around him in the office like a pack of wolves, their eyes scanning for any weakness, any opportunity to strike. But it was the subtle things that stung the most, the way Richard would deliberately assign Jamal the least exciting tasks, the way he made sure Jamal knew he wasn't a part of the inner circle, the way Richard acted as if Jamal was still a child, that he didn't have the right to rise above the place he had been shoved into. One morning, Jamal was sitting at his desk, trying to focus on a report that had been thrown his way last minute. His phone buzzed. It was a message from his dad. "Call me when you can, we need to talk." A feeling of dread washed over him. He excused himself from his desk and stepped into the quiet hallway to call. "Dad, what's going on?" There was a long pause before his dad spoke, his voice heavy. "Jamal, I need to tell you something. There's been a change. I didn't want to tell you like this, but it's time you know. Your boss, Richard, isn't just any manager. He works for me." Jamal's world tilted. His father, his quiet, humble father, was the CEO of the company. Richard didn't know it, but Jamal wasn't just any employee. He was the son of the man who owned the very company Richard worked for. Jamal stood frozen in the hallway, his mind racing. Everything that had happened, every cruel word, every subtle insult, every piece of the puzzle began to fall into place. Richard wasn't just a manager, he was an obstacle. But he didn't know the truth. And that was about to change. As he hung up the phone, the realization hit him like a freight train. Jamal's entire life, his struggle, had been a game to them. And Richard's warning. It had been more than just a passing comment. It was a challenge Jamal was now ready to face head-on. But how far would he go? Would he confront Richard, or would he bring down everything, piece by piece? The tension in the office had never been higher, and Jamal was about to find out just how deep this battle went. The clock was ticking. The day of the company-wide meeting arrived, and Jamal felt a tight knot in his chest. Richard had been cold toward him all week, more dismissive than usual, and his behavior was beginning to feel like something worse was lurking beneath the surface. Jamal had always tried to keep his emotions in check, but today, everything seemed different. The weight of Richard's words, the constant undermining, the subtle insults, had been building, and he could feel the storm coming. As the meeting began, Jamal sat at the back of the room, trying to blend in, just like he always did. Richard took the stage, and the moment he opened his mouth, Jamal could feel the tension crackle in the air. Richard's tone was biting, condescending, as if everyone were beneath him. But it was what came next that left Jamal breathless. Richard glanced over the room, his eyes lingering on Jamal, then said, "And let's make sure we don't get too excited about this project. We wouldn't want someone to think they're entitled to more than they deserve, right?" Jamal's heart stopped. The words were aimed directly at him, a public slap in the face that left everyone in the room silent. It was a calculated move, meant to humiliate, to remind Jamal of his place. The blood rushed to his head, and he could feel the heat in his chest, the anger threatening to boil over. He stood up. Every eye in the room turned to him, but Jamal couldn't stop now. This wasn't just about a project or a promotion. It was about dignity, respect, and everything he had fought for. His voice cracked through the silence, low at first, but growing stronger with each word. "You have no idea who you're talking to, Richard," Jamal said, his voice unwavering despite the storm of emotions raging inside him. The room gasped. No one had ever seen Jamal like this before. Richard's face reddened as Jamal continued. "I've been working under you, listening to your insults, but today you've crossed a line. I'm not just some employee you can push around. I'm not just Jamal, I'm the CEO's son. And you've been treating me like I don't matter." The room went still. Richard's smug expression faltered, then twisted into something darker. He tried to say something, but the words caught in his throat. Jamal's breath was heavy now. The anger and disbelief mixed with the realization that this moment had come. There was no going back. But the silence felt unbearable. The truth was out now, and Jamal had set the stage for a reckoning. The question remained: what would happen next? The silence in the room stretched on, thick with the weight of Jamal's revelation. Richard stood frozen, his face flushed with anger, but for the first time, Jamal didn't feel small. In that moment, it wasn't just about the words Richard had thrown at him. It was about all the quiet, subtle moments he had endured. It was about the years of being overlooked, of proving himself time and time again, only to be made to feel like he didn't belong. Jamal had finally found his voice. Richard stammered, but the words he tried to muster had no power. The room had already shifted. People were no longer looking at Jamal with pity or disbelief. They were looking at him with respect, with recognition of the strength it took to stand up in front of them all. The CEO himself had been silent during the confrontation, but afterward, Jamal's father called him into his office. His dad's voice was calm, but there was pride in it. "You've earned your place here, Jamal," his father said, "and you've shown everyone that they can't take that away from you." It wasn't the kind of victory that came with applause or grand gestures. It wasn't about making a scene. It was about reclaiming dignity in a place that had tried to strip it away. But the impact of that moment stretched far beyond Jamal. It resonated with every person in that room who had ever felt powerless, overlooked, or silenced. In a world where racial injustice still runs deep, where people are judged by the color of their skin, Jamal's stand was a reminder that fighting for what's right is never easy, but it's always worth it.